Chad would probably talk about. So this is, I do farm also, so unlike Steve Groff, he's known by his hat. He wears one hat. I wear many hats. This is my farm and base of operation. Like I said, I work with Kings AgriSeeds and I operate Cayuga Ag. So I don't want this to be a commercial, and I purposely wanted to be last because of that. And I'm going to reiterate a few things that you already heard today, but the whole regenerative and biological farming is a process, and there is no silver bullet, like you've already heard today. And there's multiple practices that add up to make significant gains. So it's not just one thing, it's not just one process, and I would definitely warn you to be suspect of any product that claims to do something significant in a one and done thing. It's not going to happen that way unless you get really lucky. So there are numerous products out on the market that have very good benefits, and you heard the word snake oil and foo-foo dust. Some of them may be. There's a number of them though that do have benefits and bring something to value, but no one and done solution. So you did hear Chad mention, and Peter a little bit indirectly, the soil priming program. That's on my farm. That's what I've implemented probably as much as anything, and I think is a very important piece, is you have to first have the biology out there, and secondly, you have to feed it. And this soil priming program that was put together, developed by AEA, is adding biology in the form of a soil inoculant and adding food and stimulants to that. So the combination of that in a system does great things for improving the diversity of the biology and the overall biological activity. And it is best done in the fall, Chad mentioned. That's when you can get the most impact. It can be done in other times of the year. So again, it's basically the addition of multiple species of plant growth promoting bacteria, some fungi, other microorganisms, and supplying energy and resources to get them aggressively working and producing. A little bit newer product in the soil inoculant range is a product called Santera that AEA has developed, and this is I would just call it an amped up biological inoculant that has over 25 different species in it. And another sort of key ingredient in there, I think, that has a big impact is it actually has some algae in there, and algae is something that actually I haven't heard anybody mention today, but algae exists in the soil and is an important food source for the biology in the soil. And incidentally, what kills algae, spraying Roundup and other harsh chemicals and salts are going to kill those algae. So algae is a living organism within the soil as well. We talked about soil additives, and there are a number of products on the market also as seed applied biologicals, and you're starting actually to hear more about these in the main chemical company line, where they're trying to actually add some biologicals in with their chemical package. So some mycorrhizae is a big one. You've heard mycorrhizae talked about today already. There's a few products out, actually a number of different products, but products that I work with, MST and BioCo Gold. Trichoderma is another one that has some really good benefits in protecting and extending the root system of plants, and those are products, BioTrigger and Sabrex. And then in the organic world, humic acid is a pretty commonly used seed treatment. So there's different people that supply that. humic acid as an organic seed treatment, which again is stimulating biology and warding off some of the bad people. So when it comes to seed applied biologicals, again, you've heard this already today, but taking just a normal root system that's out there trying to gain nutrients from the soil, get them into the plant, if you can couple that with the mycorrhizae that just has a symbiotic relationship with those roots and effectively extends those roots with a much denser network to gain those nutrients and get them into the plant. This is actually a picture of some orchard grass roots after a mycorrhizae product was applied at planting with them, and this is in the seeding year. You can see quite a difference in the root system because the mycorrhizae not only extends the root system but also provides protection from the bad organisms out there and allows the root system to flourish and get bigger. Again, it's not just one thing. It's a whole system and processes, and a big part of that is cover crops. And diversity in cover crops definitely pays. Different nutrients are able to be released by the exudates that come from plant roots, and different nutrients are released better by different species. And different rooting structure physically provides benefits, and many different things like that. So diversity in cover crops is pretty important. Cover crops are also an important food source for biology. They always need food to eat, and if you have bare soil with nothing on it, there's no food source for them. So just some root pictures from cover crops, getting that soil aggregation, getting the root penetration through the soil profile, and then the organisms that actually help to add to, like the rhizobia bacteria that produces the nodules on legumes. So that is a soil bacteria and then nodules are created on the roots and fix nitrogen. And just incidentally, a lot of people think about legumes and what nitrogen they might supply to another growing crop. When that legume is growing, it's primarily producing enough nitrogen for itself, not a lot of additional nitrogen that's just being sloughed off while that's being grown. It's when that crop stops growing for whatever reason. You've terminated it, it's been plowed under, it's been cut off. That's when the nitrogen sloughs off and can provide nitrogen to another crop. This is a picture of fungi in the soil, mycorrhizae and other fungi that really plays a big part. And like Peter mentioned, that there are lots of bacteria in the soil, a lot of products tend to add more bacteria. Fungi is a really important part, and the more fungi that we can encourage to be growing out there in the soil makes a big difference. So that was just sort of an overview that I wanted to say from my perspective and what I do as a producer and also as a supplier in the market. And then I just want to tell you about a journey with some fields of my own. So I took over a rented farm back about 4 years ago now. Was terribly abused, heavier soil, just not taken care of, heavy. And so I took on a process of trying to whip it into shape to be able to do something. And I have a relatively small farm, and when I first started farming on my own, I decided that I needed a way to make that small farm pay and not just be a hobby that I spend money on. So at that time, I decided to be organic, and so I've grown the farm since then and remain organic. So this picture shows the field in the forefront is covered with snow. This is very early in the spring. The field on the other side of the hedgerow, you can see the snow is basically all gone off of that. The field on the other side of the hedgerow, I had applied the soil primer program to. The previous fall. So you can just see by the fact of the snow off of that, that soil is more active and is actually producing a little bit of heat and speeding up the snow melt. So you can put out a lot of data, but that shows what's going on there in a very visual way. So I want to tell you about the field directly behind the one that you didn't see in the picture. So in the first year when I took it over, it was a fairly wet spring. Like I said, it was relatively wet, poorly drained, and I was not able to plant spring crop on it. And so at that time I said, all right, it's time to start rebuilding this and restoring this. So I planted buckwheat as a cover crop that summer, and as my primary farm employee manager, he says that field couldn't even grow a good crop of buckwheat, and it didn't. But it got me started, and that fall I put in the soil primer program with winter triticale that I harvested for grain. When I harvested that grain, I spread the straw. I didn't bale the straw, I left the straw on there to help build that a little bit more. And then after that triticale came off, I put a late summer diverse cover crop on there, along with the soil primer program again. And then plowed that down in the spring and planted corn. And remember, this is organic, and that's where it got me to this year. And that field averaged 170 bushel organic. So it really made a difference from not being able to grow buckwheat hardly, 2.5 years later, producing a pretty substantial crop of corn. So that's the power of what getting the biology and everything going can do. And I think as you go through this winter, you're probably going to hear a lot of different people talk about biological products with the price of fertilizer. And it's something definitely to be considering and looking at. But again, don't look at it as silver bullet, and it's not one and done, going to solve all your problems and cut your fertilizer needs in half overnight. So that's what I had to say. Steve, you want to add more?
Well, time to go home. Isn't it done? Well, I'll give a little bit of a perspective.